Welcome back to Education Matters. We're going to continue our series of interviews with the announced candidates for State Superintendent, and joining us today is Dr. Jen Mangrum. Jen, welcome to Education Matters.
Thank you. Good morning.
So I said that you are the third candidate. Just to remind viewers and voters, the primary is in March of 2020, so we are 12 months away. And we have 4 announced candidates for the Democratic nomination for State Superintendent. The current incumbent, Mark Johnson, has not announced whether he's going to run for re-election. I think the presumption maybe is that he is, but we're going to talk about you today. All right, let me give you a little bit of a bio, and then you can fill in. You are a native North Carolinian.
I am.
Both of your parents were elementary school teachers, so I guess you can say that teaching was in your DNA from the beginning, and then you became a teacher. You were a classroom teacher in Onslow, Guilford. You went to 3 great universities who've produced a lot of great teachers in North Carolina, UNC Wilmington, East Carolina, and UNC Greensboro, which is where you're now teaching and helping prepare future teachers. So I guess my first question, which is the first question that I've asked the other candidates, is why are you running to be State Superintendent?
So I'm running to reclaim public education in North Carolina for our teachers and our students. I think that we have taken a path where education has become about politics and about businesses and about the needs of groups of people that are not in our public schools. And so I want to be the person who represents teachers and makes schools places people want to be, places people want to learn.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously, and you mentioned about, you started out, you said about students and about teachers. I mean, it seems like if you're going to talk about public education in schools, teachers are a great place to start.
Yes.
What do you think that we need to be doing differently? We talk a lot about teacher pay,
right,
and we need to talk about that.
Right.
And you can talk about that. But I mean, what do we need to be doing? What are we doing right? Where are we falling short when it comes to teaching in North Carolina?
Yeah. So I was a classroom teacher for 14 years in elementary school. Counting my primary opponents and superintendent, they have less than 7 years altogether. I know what it means to be a teacher, and teachers are not being valued. In 1989, I moved to Guilford County to be a teacher, and there was a surplus of teachers, meaning I couldn't get a job. Wow. I had 2 years experience and a master's degree. Fortunately, there was an allocation, I got a position, so I had master's pay. I had a full-time assistant as a second grade teacher. I had a salary that was ranked, towards I guess we were about 20th, because I was under Governor Hunt's stint as governor in the 3rd and 4th terms. I had the resources I needed to teach, and those things shouldn't be like, wow, that's awesome.
Right.
It should be the norm. And so because I've been in their shoes, and for the past 14 years as a professor, I spend every week in schools working with my student teachers. And it has completely changed in terms of teachers aren't supported, they aren't respected, they aren't valued. I think parents do, but the people that hold the money strings, the people who make decisions about their autonomy, and that's important to teachers.
Well, that's the thing. We were you were down there. We had our camera down at the Teacher March about a year ago, and the questions kept coming really from the legislature and the media about teacher pay. But to a teacher, everyone I talked about, that I interviewed and talked to, said the things you just mentioned. It was autonomy, it was school supplies, it was how old my textbooks were. It was everyone wanted to show me the pictures of their classrooms that were falling apart. It was like, and how much they had to spend out of their own pocket. It's not, I've been in the sort of corporate world, in the nonprofit world, professional, but yet I've never had to go out and buy my own paper. Right.
I was in a school a couple weeks ago, and it was funny because they actually were learning about Governor Hunt, but all they had was a handout that the teachers had run off of a textbook. They didn't have a textbook, and teachers, you talk about May 16th. I ran against Phil Berger in 2018 because I wanted to be a voice for teachers. I said, teachers don't typically advocate for themselves. They shut their doors, they want to teach their kids, they want to make a difference. But on May 16th, I found out that changed.
Right.
And when you have 20,000 plus teachers in Raleigh saying the same thing, and yet our legislators were in the building looking out. I don't know if you've seen that picture of all the teachers. They're not listening to teachers.
Right.
teachers understand that I know what they're going through. And this should not be happening in North Carolina. We should be at the top of our game. We should be ranked at least in the top 20 in terms of salary, in terms of our curriculum. I believe that we have to have testing, but we're doing a ridiculous amount. So let's take the lead. Let's be the state in the country that people say that's where education is.
Right.
Is
let me
first.
ask you. Let me shift gears on something. You in your platform and on your website, you talk about equity.
Equity, yeah.
We talk about it a fair amount on the show. I think if you are in the Triangle area, you have a different experience than if you were in Cumberland County, where I grew up, or if you're in Duplin County, where my wife grew up. Why is that important?
Yeah, I wrote an article for Policy Watch, Tale of Two Schools. These schools were within 10 miles. I just recently talked to someone who had the same experience with schools within 1 mile. Schools that are affluent are typically called good schools, right? Schools in poverty, not. Well, I work in schools of poverty. There is good instruction going on. Teachers are working hard, but those kids are behind the 8 ball. One of the things I work on is a STEM project at UNCG, where we help elementary teachers teach engineering. And we only do it in these schools of poverty because these kids are not getting rigorous, high-quality education. And it's not because of the teachers.
Right.
It's because the teachers are held to these high-stakes tests. It's because of the pressures of pacing guides. It's because people are micromanaging, again, not trusting teachers.
And that's the autonomy thing is another one that you've
It's
talked
so
about.
important, right? And then you look at the schools that are more affluent, where it's more, teachers have a little bit more freedom. I wouldn't say a lot. But that shouldn't be happening. I just recently also worked with the National Paideia Center, and there's a school in Charlotte that we work with that the PTO paid us $60,000 in a contract to work with their schools,
wow.
Okay? Now, that's the PTO. There are other schools that isn't even imaginable.
Right.
And so we have to do something. You know, I won't control the money strings, but I certainly will lobby on behalf of schools and districts and teachers and superintendents to say, give them the resources they need so that we have a more equitable playing field for our students.
You mentioned your current, I mean, you will be running against other Democrats for the nomination, but ultimately one of you will be running, again, likely against the current superintendent. I mean,
it is likely that I'll be running.
Yeah. What should the next state superintendent be doing differently?
So I was in Northeast North Carolina recently and met with the superintendent. And he said that he was not given autonomy, that he wasn't given the resources he needs, he wasn't given the freedom to make decisions around assessment, around curriculum, that he felt like his hands are tied. And his school district, I think he said, had over 70% poverty. My job would be to collaborate with superintendents, not be the person that puts demands on them, but says, how can I support you? Because I want all these districts to succeed. So I think the superintendent needs to work in conjunction with the superintendents as a group. I also think I need to lobby the General Assembly and say, look, let me explain to you what schools are like, because you don't know. You don't realize that teachers are putting snacks in their closet because kids are hungry.
Right.
So between working with the superintendents in the school districts, being a fierce advocate for teachers and our children, and then working with the General Assembly to say we need policies that are effective, that make sense, that put money in public schools.
Right. Last question, real quick. Are you optimistic, if you are the nominee and get elected, are you optimistic you can make those kind of changes?
I know that I can make those changes, and 2020 is so important. Teachers need to vote. Teachers need to have a voice. Teachers need to be advocates because our children are worth it, and North Carolina needs to be at the top of this country.
Dr. Jen Mangrum.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on and talking about your campaign. After the break, this week's final word.